President Bush will be joining us live from the White House Rose Garden for an exclusive question and answer session.
Don't we have a softball game that day, though?
Cancel it.
Oh.
Forget it. You aren't playing that day. We don't need an injured player.
We'll be there. We'll be there for sure. Also, coming up, Paula and I in Washington for that special broadcast. President Bush discusses the presidential campaign and the issues live. That's this Wednesday on CBS This Morning. And this morning, in our next half hour, we're going to talk politics with the men in charge of all three presidential campaigns. Right now, we're going to talk weather, though, with Mark McEwen.
Good morning. Welcome back, Harry. Good morning to you,
morning,
Paula.
Mark.
The three of us, how long has it been?
About a month.
About a month since we've been together. Let's see if we remember how to do this together. Take a look at the map. Parts of central Florida are flooded this morning as a result of torrential rains. I believe we have some footage from severe thunderstorms. Some of the worst were in Sarasota County, where low-lying residential areas have been evacuated. Look at that right there. And we have more rain in the forecast for parts of Florida today. We'll tell you about that in just a little bit. Oof. Look at that footage. Paula?
All right, thanks, Mark. Time to get caught up in the news this morning. Scientists say there have been more than 1,000 small aftershocks in Southern California since two powerful earthquakes rattled the region yesterday. But fears are subsiding that those tremors might be a sign of an even more devastating quake to come. The epicenter of yesterday's biggest and most damaging quake was the desert community of Yucca Valley. Ron Allen is there now with the latest. Good morning, Ron.
Good morning, Paula. Through the night, the aftershocks kept rolling through this town. I lost count at one point. There were so many of them. Not major jolts, but enough to keep a lot of people awake and somewhat anxious about what might happen. And that continues to be one of the problems out here today. Overnight, there is not much new damage to report despite all those aftershocks. The cleanup continues at some stores where items were knocked off the shelves. And seismologists say somewhere out in the California desert, there is an 18-foot wide, 40-mile-long fissure that marks where the strongest California quake in some 40 years hit. Most earthquakes last just a few seconds, but this one kept on shaking, pulling these remote little towns apart and causing even more emotional damage.
And we were just about, 10 feet from our sliding door where we could go out, but we couldn't get up.
And for a terrifying minute, everyone wondered if this was the big one.
The whole house was shaking, kids and all, and it was a pretty frightening experience.
The strongest California quake in 40 years rocked and swayed through desert communities about 100 miles east of Los Angeles. And then, 3 hours later, it started all over again. More than 150 people were injured, and so far only one death. A 3.5-year-old boy just visiting California with his parents.
Try and keep it, just all the provisions that you'd need to survive for 72 hours.
A lot of Californians may need their earthquake survival kits, since there's still a chance of more damaging aftershocks. And some shaken residents now wonder, is California really worth it?
Right now, all I want to do is get the hell out of Joshua Tree and go somewhere else where there isn't any earthquakes like this.
The state of emergency declared by Governor Wilson remains in effect, but officials have scaled back the warning to residents in 2 counties to stay near home. Also, overnight, the injury total climbed to over 350. Today, officials here say they are going to start trying to deal with some everyday needs, like trying to get groceries to some people in areas. Again, there was one major store that was really devastated, a lot of things damaged. So people will have difficulties doing some basic things like that today. Paula?
All right, thanks a lot, Ron. Ron Allen reporting for us from California this morning. More on the quakes coming up in just a couple of minutes, including a talk with a couple of people who also went through the quake. The Supreme Court is expected to issue its decision today in a case watched anxiously by both sides in the abortion debate. At issue is a strict Pennsylvania abortion law. Its provisions include a 24-hour waiting period during which a woman has to get information on alternatives from her doctor. The Pennsylvania law also requires a woman who wants an abortion to notify her husband in most cases, and it requires minors to notify a parent. Law correspondent Rita Braver is awaiting the decision at the Supreme Court now. Good morning, Rita.
Good morning, Paula.
I'd like to talk to you about the options the court has today. Can the court uphold just certain parts of the Pennsylvania law and not overturn Roe v. Wade?
The court could really uphold the whole Pennsylvania law and not overturn Roe versus Wade. That would mean really that the states could not absolutely outlaw abortion, but that a state could put a lot of restrictions to make it extremely difficult for a woman to get an abortion. And that is really what everyone is waiting to see. How far will they go? The biggest issue here, I think, is this idea that you have to notify your spouse. in most cases before you get an abortion. That has been struck down in the past before, and a lot of women really object to that.
Does the court have to make a decision today or at all?
You know, one of the things about this place that you get to learn very early on is that they're the Supreme Court and they do whatever they want. They don't have to make a decision. But they didn't have to take this case. This normally would have been heard next year, the next term, but the court, for reasons that they've never explained, decided they would add this to the calendar quite late. It was argued the last day, and there will be a lot of calling of political names if the court suddenly backs away from this case.
How likely is that for the court to say that we're going to delay this until next fall?
You know, they have done that kind of thing before. They usually say, we want to have a case argued again because we didn't get enough information on a specific issue. But again, they would have to really go some distance because they heard a lot of information on almost every issue when they heard the argument in this case.
Rita Bravo reporting from outside the U.S. Supreme Court. Thank you, Rita. Authorities in New Jersey say they will file murder charges today against one or both suspects in the kidnapping of the president of Exxon International. The body of Stanley Rizzo was found over the weekend in a remote, brushy area. There is speculation he died of a heart attack shortly after he was taken from his driveway. The New York Times reports this morning he had been shot in the arm. The two suspects already are charged with kidnapping Rizzo 2 months ago today. In the fighting for what used to be Yugoslavia and war-torn Sarajevo, there is renewed hope that relief supplies may soon get to starving civilians. Bill McLaughlin reports on signs of progress.
Fighting around Sarajevo airport has subsided this morning, and the capital city itself is reportedly the quietest it has been in days. Serbian forces claim they've withdrawn their troops and heavy artillery from the area and handed the airport over to UN peacekeepers. This morning, UN troops began moving their gear into the airport and hoisted the UN's blue flag over the terminal. A first tenuous step towards declaring it safe enough for relief flights to begin landing. If the siege of Sarajevo is lifted this week, the credit will almost certainly go to France's 75-year-old president, François Mitterrand. His dramatic trip yesterday to Sarajevo astonished Europeans, as did the sight of a venerable president touring the war-shattered capital in an armored personnel carrier. His visit was a tremendous morale booster to Sarajevo's embattled citizens, many of whom emerged from their bomb shelters for the first time in weeks to give the French leader a hero's welcome. Mitterrand also comforted war victims at Sarajevo's main hospital, promising them that French military aircraft loaded with food and medicines would soon land at Sarajevo airport. This morning, UN Commander General Louis Mackenzie said he wasn't sure the airport would be able to open today. He has seen enough of the bitter conflict between Serbs and Bosnians to be cautious about the prospects for peace. Bill McLaughlin, CBS News, London.
A 35-year-old man who had his liver replaced with a baboon's liver is listed in critical condition this morning at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. The patient's name is not being released. He had been stricken with hepatitis B. The virus destroyed his liver and would have destroyed any human liver transplant, but is not expected to attack the baboon liver. It is the first time the liver of a baboon has been implanted into a human. In sports news this morning, the U.S. men's Olympic basketball team won its first game at an Olympic qualifying tournament in Portland, Oregon. The Dream Team picked up itself against Cuba when Magic Johnson's pass got away. Michael Jordan went behind his back to Larry Bird for a jump shot. The Americans won by 79 points. They will play Canada next. 9 minutes after the hour. You can do that, Mark, can't you?
Absolutely. Behind my back. It's so tough guarding someone as you're asking them for their autograph. It's a real tough thing to do, so I think the Cuba team found it up. Michael, would you sign this? Let's talk about the weather right here. We have the latest satellite picture. Got what is going on outside. Some storm, you can see these clouds right here. This is from what caused yesterday's storms. We're going to talk about that area of the day. Down in Florida, we'll get to in just a second because Florida has a little more rain in store. Up across the northwest, you see some clouds up there. They've had a big change going on up across the northwest in terms of what has been going on with the weather. And let me turn this way. As you can see, cool conditions up there, heavy summer rain, temperatures in the 60s and 70s. That's about 30 to 40 degrees lower than what they had last.
People from Los Angeles to Las Vegas were centered in the California desert east of Los Angeles. The main quake registered a very strong 7.4 on the Richter scale. Within hours, a 6.5 aftershock hit. The town of Yucca Valley was right in the middle of everything, and joining us this morning are the town's fire chief, Robert Muncy, and police sergeant Bob Semendich. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning, Harry.
Chief, let me start with you. Can you tell us where you were and what it was like when you first felt the earthquake hit?
Well, fortunately, I was in bed, and it was the worst earthquake I've ever felt, and I was really frightened. It was a lot worse than fighting any fire I've ever been in, because a fire, you know what's going to happen. With this earthquake, it shook so hard, I thought the house was going to come down.
Some people have said that these temblors seemed longer than other ones they had felt before.
Well, I had time to get dressed, get outside, and watch the car bounce around in the driveway, and it was dark, so it went for an awful long time, yes.
And Sergeant, let me ask you, which one felt more significant to you? Because the first one hit, and it wasn't much later that there was a second and very significant earthquake.
Well, actually, when I felt it, I was about 125 miles from here in the Lake Havasu, Arizona area. And it shook me pretty hard on my trailer that I was sleeping in.
And Sergeant, what kinds of problems are you confronted with now in the community? What kinds of problems do you still have there? Sergeant Semendich?
Yes. What we're experiencing now is just an elevation of our extra patrol of the damaged businesses, where we have brought in extra deputies to extra patrol the businesses that have been damaged and have no security.
And Chief, what kinds of problems are you confronted with? I have read over the last day or so that there are a lot of towns there that don't have water at all, that if you've got a fire, you're in a world of hurt.
Well, we've got 40% of the town as of 6 o'clock last night that didn't have any water service. Yeah, we're in a world of hurt, but in California we have a good mutual aid plan. So we brought in 10 extra water tenders that carry anywhere from 1,500 to 2,500 gallons of water each, and those came in from the San Bernardino Valley area. So we're prepared in the event that we do get a structure fire or a wildland fire.
Chief, what was your town deeply affected by the quake that had come through that part of California earlier this spring?
Yes, we were, although of course it wasn't anywhere near as severe as this. It affected us in the fact that it made everybody wake up and get a little bit better prepared, and then we had this one. So it was really a good thing for us to have the smaller one first.
Yeah. And Sergeant, finally, you know, there are a lot of people who don't live in California who wonder why you all live out there with the earthquake threat all of the time. You have any second thoughts?
Personally, it really doesn't bother me too much. The only problem I had was at my house, a lot of damage from things falling off the shelf and dishes falling out of the cupboards and stuff like that.
Okay. Sergeant Bob Semendich, thank you. Chief Robert Muncie, we do appreciate you taking the time to join us this morning. Thanks so much, and take care.
Thank you, Harry.
Paula?
15 minutes after the hour, Harry. Next on CBS This Morning, our earthquake coverage continues with a look at when the big one might hit and the stress that comes from living under that constant threat. Coming up in our next half hour, Campaign 92. We'll be talking with the leaders of all 3 presidential campaigns. Plus, consumer correspondent Hattie Kaufman has a way to save you money on your next new car. And a little bit later on, the man who plays Murphy Brown's favorite mixologist, Pat Corley.
The Brooker boys are here on tour. What's been the highlight of your Lake Edna stop, Matt?
I'd say this new honey barbecued chicken, Russ. Fried chicken glazed in a special sauce with a touch of honey. Get 2 pieces with baked beans, coleslaw, and a biscuit in a roundup meal for just $2.99.
Woo-wee! That was completely unsolicited.
Oh, what?
The 2-piece honey barbecue roundup meal, just $2.99, or the 8-piece meal, just $9.99 for a limited time in Lake Edna or your neck of the woods.
Now in Branson, Missouri, Andy Williams. Unlike any other show, Andy Williams, Moon River Theater. Call 417-334-4500.
The vacation experience of a lifetime. The Shepherd of the Hills, Branson, Missouri.
A tent sale at both Homemakers locations without the tent. Air-conditioned comfort, tent sale prices, discontinued items, overbuys, one-of-a-kind items, some white elephants, but the prices are peanuts. Homemakers must clean out their inventory. Their loss, your gain. Acres of furniture. Pick it up or delivery can be arranged. A tent sale. Lots of tent sale prices without the tent. Shop both locations, Homemakers West and Homemakers Furniture Outlet.
I made the smart choice. I just bought a Pontiac Grand Am. I got it for a smart price of only $199 a month. My Grand Am was a very smart buy.
Look at how my Grand Am compares to Honda and Toyota. And look at my low payment, only $199 a month.
Do you think I'd spend thousands more for an import? I don't think so.
Drive Pontiac Grand Am at $199 a month. It's definitely a smart buy.
See your Golden Circle Pontiac dealer.
Looking at 17 minutes after the hour, Dr. Kate Hutton is a staff seismologist at the California Institute of Technology in Pasadena. She joins us this morning. Good morning, Dr. Hutton.
Good morning.
How significant is the fact that you had two major earthquakes within a several-hour period, apparently coming from two separate fault lines?
Well, they are on two separate fault lines, but they're fairly close together geographically, or they're about 15 miles apart, so they're probably physically related. So it's really not that unusual to see something like that. It's fairly common for the largest aftershocks to sometimes be on close by but different faults than the main shock.
I know that you have determined that the first earthquake was not on the San Andreas Fault. What do we know about the second earthquake?
Well, the second earthquake was not on the San Andreas Fault either. And we don't know as much about the fault that it was on as we do the fault that the main shock was on. Because we haven't yet seen any rupture at the surface as we have with the first one.
Is there any concern that those fissures might have weakened the San Andreas Fault?
Okay, well, all of this surface rupture occurs well to the north of the San Andreas Fault, and north of the Yucca Valley, if you're familiar with that area.
Sure.
It's at least 20 miles away from the San Andreas. The 6.5 actually was closer to the San Andreas. It was about 7 to 8 miles away.
How likely is it that the folks living in that area have to be concerned about another very strong aftershock or another earthquake?
Well, the probability of an aftershock above 6.0 during the first 24 hours is about 50%. Now, most of that time period has already gone by, so we're down probably, well, the second 24 hours, the number is 11%. So by the time we get 24 hours out from the shock, we're looking at a substantially lower probability, but it's still significant.
Do you care
still much higher than our normal day-to-day earthquake risk.
Do you care to hazard a prediction on when Southern California might be subjected to the earthquake that's referred to as the big one?
Well, many seismologists give about a 95% chance for the next 30 years, so it'll probably be during our lifetime, but anything more specific than that is very difficult for us at this point.
Dr. Hutton, thank you for joining us this morning. We appreciate your help. If you live under the constant threat to the major earthquake, even a tremor can be terrifying. Dr. Bob Arnott joins us to look at earthquake stress. I've been through a number of them, and they are terrifying.
You know, there are no two people who react the same to a situation like this. Lots of people will go through it and feel that they just have one more neat story to tell and really are completely unaffected. There are also those who are chronically anxious and depressed who you would expect to do the worst. And yet when they're finally faced with a real situation rather than the ones that they imagine, they can do very well. The people we really worry about are those who suffer from this post-traumatic stress syndrome, who become increasingly vulnerable because they're so overwhelmed by the events. During the day, they constantly see pictures of the event going over and over again in their mind, and at night, they continue to have nightmares about it.
Plus, anybody who lives out there knows whenever there's an earthquake, the airwaves are just pumped full of all this pop psychology and what you're supposed to do about the stress. What do folks need to worry about?
There's only one thing that psychiatrists really worry about, and that is post-traumatic stress syndrome. It's quite true that we create a need for psychiatrists and psychologists where there is no need. That as lots of people go through something like this, there wasn't that much in terms of devastation, and so although there might be some increase in anxiety, it's the kind of thing you deal with. The reason psychiatrists are so concerned about this post-traumatic stress syndrome is that an individual gets stuck in it. That is, unless they get pretty immediate psychiatric care, it goes on for years and years like it did after Vietnam. Now, during the Gulf War, when an individual was exposed to battle and suffered from this syndrome, they would pull them back, use intensive therapy, and get them right back into the situation so that they didn't get stuck in this post-traumatic stress syndrome.
So does that mean leaving California altogether? I don't think
Lots of people are.
Dr. Bob Arnott, thanks. Harry?
22 minutes past the hour. Be with us Wednesday on CBS This Morning for an exclusive question and answer session with President Bush, live from the White House.
Hi, I'm Dennis James. You know, Medicare was one of the best things ever to come along for people 65 and over. But as good as Medicare is, it's not enough. Fact is, just one stay in the hospital could cost you thousands of dollars, money that comes straight out of your own pocket. Well, fortunately, there's an economical way to protect yourself from the costly gaps in Medicare. It's called Senior Supplement, the all-new Medicare supplement plan from Physicians Mutual. Now, I want you to write down this toll-free number and then call it to get this free information kit. It has all the facts. But first, I want to tell you about some of the important benefits this plan provides. From the very first day you're hospitalized, Senior Supplement pays your entire $652 hospital deductible each and every time you need it. It pays all your Medicare hospital and skilled nursing home co-payments. Plus, it pays your $100 Part B medical deductible, and then pays your eligible medical expenses not fully paid by Medicare. And every time Medicare raises its deductibles and co-payments, Senior Supplement increases your benefits to match dollar for dollar. And best of all, your Senior Supplement coverage can start immediately. No waiting periods, even for health problems you may have had in the past. Senior Supplement gives you all this and more. Of course, I can't cover it all right now, but I'll tell you this. You can get it at a very affordable cost. So do yourself a favor. Now call this toll-free number to get your free information kit on Senior Supplement directly by mail. Remember, there's no cost or obligation of any kind. You're merely calling for information. You owe it to yourself to find out about this important protection. So call right now. Remember what I said, no cost, no obligation. You're getting information, okay? Okay.